distance enough from which to look back and discuss its triumphs and tribulations, the price of war, and many nuances and dimensions which only the people who were there can tell with authenticity. We have with us Colonel S.C. Tyagi, veteran army officer who witnessed the conflict and brought it out in his book, Kargil Victory, Battles from Peak to Peak. In it, he gives us a riveting account of his own experiences and also of the individual and collective acts of bravery of the soldiers who fought fiercely to free one peak after the other.
Excuse me.
Joining this narrative is also Rachna Bisht Rawat, a journalist, author and an army wife. In her book, Kargil Untold Stories from the War, she revisits the Battle of Kargil 20 years after the war and brings you unheard stories of the men in uniform and their families. Our star cast for this session includes Colonel Sonam Wangchuk, who was honored with the Mahavir Chakra for the first victory at Kargil. He led his unit climbing in single file an icy vertical face 18,000 feet high, evicting 135 Pak troops in a 3-day battle fought in 2 feet of snow at -6 degrees. And moderating this session, we welcome Vishnu Som, a veteran correspondent and anchor with NDTV, who has covered many conflict and war zones, Afghanistan, Congo, Iraq and Kargil. He'll also share with us the media's changing perspective in covering war. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and a very, very warm welcome to this session. I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting all of us. 20 years ago, the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force participated in a war that in many senses redefined the nature of conflict. When it comes to mountain warfare, this was the most grueling, the most difficult, the most testing mountain warfare perhaps in the history of warfare. It was fought at altitudes in excess of 12,000 feet to more than 18,000 feet. The soldiers who participated in Kargil were put through a test which they succeeded in passing with flying colors, but not before we had lost more than 500 of our brave soldiers, and not before more than 1,300 were very seriously injured in the Kargil war. The purpose of this session is to honor some of the soldiers who've become icons, soldiers whose names an entire generation of Indians have come to respect, come to know of, to reflect on the nature of the war itself and to share stories. So this is a session on storytelling. And what we are going to do is we're going to be speaking to Colonel Sonam Wangchuk, Mahavir Chakra, and of course Colonel Tyagi, whose book, The Kargil Victory, Battles from Peak to Peak, describes a lot about the area where we fought, the peaks and the individual battles where our soldiers succeeded. And Rachna Bisht Rawat writes this wonderful book, Kargil Untold Stories from the War, and we're going to discuss some of those untold stories. I was a 24-year-old covering the Kargil war. I was the second journalist into that area, the first to do a satellite phone report. I think I was the first journalist in the Batalik area. And I spent a lot of time there, and I also covered the role of the Indian Air Force extensively. Kargil is a place I keep going back to every few years. I've had the opportunity of meeting several of the families of the soldiers who laid down their lives. And in the course of the next 1 hour or so, in addition to the conversation which we will have, we will also be drawing heavily from the NDTV archives in bringing to you stories about some of these braves. Captain Vikram Batra, Anuj Nair. We'll be talking about Saurabh Kalia as well. And we'll be speaking about Hanifuddin and others. And you'll get a chance to actually see their stories in these short 2-minute capsules. But since we are talking about heroes, and before we start this any further, let's remember Ye Dil Mange More, the first video, the story of Captain Vikram Batra.
My company's success was Ye Dil Mange More. The guys were so highly charged up that they're wanting that some more bunkers should have been there and we would have got the more chaps.
He was the bravest of the brave, whose slogan Ye Dil Mange More defined the spirit of some of India's bravest sons, soldiers who fought some of the most intense infantry battles since the Second World War. For his bravery, Vikram Batra was honoured with the Paramveer Chakra. At the height of the Kargil war, the NDTV team met the young captain just days before he perished, fighting to liberate the impossible point 4875 in the Kargil heights. His men knew him as Sher Shah, and the enemy had heard of this name as well.
They were on the same frequency which were we on our radio sets, and one of the Pakistani soldiers or officer, whoever it was, he said to me my code name was Sher Shah. Oh Sher Shah, you have come. Don't try to come up, otherwise you'll have a tough time. And that was the time they gave us a challenge, and my guys, they went wild. How dare a Pakistani troop can challenge us?
Vikram's next operation on the 7th of July 1999 was his last, and what he personally managed to do helped send the Pakistani army into full retreat. In bloody hand-to-hand combat with Pak soldiers, Vikram charged, screaming Durga Mata Ki Jai, his Jackrif regiment's war cry. Entering a stone fortification, he killed 5 Pakistani soldiers using his gun and bayonet, but ultimately perished when he was targeted by an enemy machine gun nest. Buoyed by his leadership, his soldiers attacked the Pakistani position with vengeance, capturing point 4875.
Most people think that we do not have to fight hand-to-hand fight now. But Kargil war, there was a lot of hand-to-hand fighting. It happened in point 4875 also. Many places this kind of a thing.
I'll share a very personal incident. When I was young, when I was a school-going kid, I really used to get scared looking at a dead body. And when the body was taken out of the coffin and the tricolor along with his cap was handed over to mom, I took the body out of the coffin and I hold it in my hands. And that was the first cremation ever in my life. Whatever fear I had for death, it went away.
We're very privileged to have with us Colonel Sonam Wangchuk, Mahavir Chakra. He's known as the Buddhist warrior. He's a warrior beyond words, but at this stage in his life, he's also helping to run a Vipassana center in Leh. That sort of gives you an idea of the scope and the depth of this man. In the Kargil war, in the Chorbatla subsector, when Colonel Wangchuk, he wasn't a colonel of course then, realized that his soldiers were in trouble, he went and asked for orders from his commanding officers saying, I need to go up, I need to be with my boys. And he was told, no, wait, Sonam, your orders will come at the right time. But Sonam felt that his life would be incomplete if he didn't do what a soldier needs to do, to be there in the front with his soldiers who had fought a battle and had run out of ammunition in this Batalik sector, in the Chorbatla area. And so he somehow managed to get a clearance from some other officer, and he went up with approximately 30 soldiers. He fought at an altitude of more than 18,000 feet. This man, I can assure you, is probably fitter than all of us in this room. At that time, carrying 30 kilos plus and marching with the others, leading them from the front to get to a ridge line where his soldiers had come in contact with the Pakistani intruders, and then to think, to plan, to feed his soldiers and to fight the enemy and to throw them off our territory was what this man did. And he did this at an altitude where you cannot breathe. breathe properly. So it's an incredible honor to have you with us. When you were finally close to linking up with the soldiers, your men, your boys, you came under intense gunfire. Tell us about what happened then.
Yeah.
Just hold it like this, close to your mouth.
Okay. Okay. It is something, it was very emotional for me. And I go for guest lectures and I always recollect the moments. And I really feel, a lot of emotions going through me. So, as Som said, when I encountered the enemy fire, I had gone to actually link up with my boys. I had taken a reinforcement of around 25 boys with me. So I was, in an open space, which you can call as a killing ground actually, where, enemy, they channel you and thereafter they bring intensive fire on you. So I would say all hell broke loose and there was firing from all over. And the first thing normally which you do as an instinct is you go on the ground. That's what we did. And at that point in time, there were two scouts who were in front of me. I was in the center and I had two boys behind me. And rest of the main body, they had not fetched up. Actually, there was a large gap, maybe around a kilometer or so. I would say I had not planned it that way, but I was fortunate. The entire party did not come under ambush. And, the first 5 minutes, the enemy got one of my boys. He was a Havaldar, Sevang Rigzin. He was just behind me. So he got a shot on his chest, to be precise, in his heart. And that was the time when I saw death from close quarters for the first time. And it was somebody whom I knew, with whom I had worked. And maybe for months together, though I'm from Forest originally, and the Dark Scouts boys, I trained with them. I had been with them for about a year by that time. So he was somebody who was very dear to me. And initially when we had started, that is, he had some sort of a premonition wherein he said कि साहब आज वर्दी जो है ठीक ठाक होना चाहिए, we have to be smartly dressed, because अगर पाकिस्तान वाले हम लोग को पकड़ के ले गए तो they should know कि हमारा इंडियन सोल्जर है जो वो बिल्कुल डिसिप्लिन्ड है और उसका बेयरिंग वगैरह बहुत अच्छा है. So that sort of a thing he had spoken that way. And when I saw him lying there, we didn't have any sort of medical cover at that stage. So only thing we could do was बोलता रहा मेरे सामने कि ठंड लग रही है साहब, ठंडा हो रहा है, because it was absolutely snowbound and he was lying over there bleeding, हार्ट में लगा है गोली, and I would see the entire area getting red. तो जल्दी से हम लोग ने, because we were carrying blankets and ground sheet, वो मैंने नीचे लगाया फटाफट उसके, and rest I couldn't do much at that stage. So that was the thing.
We'll come back to him with many more questions. But a key part of Kargil was of young men, young boys, going up those peaks after being given their orders and knowing that they are not, the chances were that they were not going to come down. The valor, the courage, the resilience in the mind, let alone the body, is something that was incredible. Vijayan Thapar was one of those young soldiers who, before going up, probably had a premonition that he wasn't going to come back. He wasn't going to see his mother or his father or his loved ones. And so he wrote a letter. If we can roll the second story and talk about and show you this letter and what it meant. As we talk about the bravery, the valor, and the sacrifice of the soldiers who fought in the Kargil war in the summer of 1999, let's not for a moment forget about the incredible sacrifices of the family members, the fathers and mothers, the wives and children. This is the story of Vijay Thapar, a young soldier who died in Kargil, and the memories that he's left behind, not just for his parents, but for the country. Like thousands of other families out there whose sons and daughters were fighting for their country, Colonel Thapar knew that there was a chance he would never see his son again. Today though, the Colonel is a proud man. His son may be gone, but Vijendra Thapar, like so many others, has earned the respect of a nation.
The spirit which won the day in Kargil is quite evident in my son's last letter, which he wrote 2 hours before he left for the attack. I'll read it out. Dearest Papa, Mama, Birdie and Granny, by the time you get this letter, I'll be observing you all from the sky, enjoying the hospitality of Apsaras. I have no regrets. In fact, even if I become a human again, I will join the army and fight for my nation. If you can, please come and see where the Indian Army fought for you tomorrow. As far as the unit is concerned, the new chap should be told about this sacrifice. I hope my photo will be kept in the A Company, Mandir with Karni Mata. Whatever organ can be taken should be done.
That's the indomitable spirit that has really defined this war. Rachna, your writing, your book, has a lot to do with your background. Married to an army officer, brother was in Kargil. You tracked the bodies during the Kargil war being returned as a journalist. This isn't just a book where you tell the story of a war, it's something deeply emotional for you. What went into your mind, into your heart as you wrote this?
When the war happened, I was in Ahmedabad. I was a reporter with Indian Express, and while you were covering the conflict, I was covering the bodies that were being brought back to villages, the processions. And what made it worse for me was that my brother was fighting in the Kargil war. He was with 5 Para. My father was also in 5. He was at home listening to Farida Khanam ghazals and drinking his whiskey and not eating anything in all those days because he had no idea where his son was. And my husband was deployed on the Ahmedabad, on the Rajasthan side, because we had heard that the Indian Army might be attacking from that side. The war didn't happen there, but my father's trauma ended when my brother returned a decorated officer. And it ended for all of us, but there were fathers whose sons never returned. We have one of those sitting here. Vikram Batra's father is here in the audience, and mother as well. So when I started writing Vikram's story, I went and met them. And from a name in Wikipedia, Vikram suddenly came alive for me as this young boy, as twins Love and Kush, who grew up watching the Paramveer Chakra on television sets. They would walk down to somebody's house. They didn't have a TV in their house, is what Mr. Batra told me. And one thing that I'll always remember is that Mrs. Batra told me that she had daughters and she had prayed for a son. And she got twins. So she told me, मैं हमेशा सोचती थी कि मुझे तो एक बेटा चाहिए था, भगवान ने 2 क्यों दे दिए? So she said when Vikram was martyred in the war, she got her answer. She said, एक बेटा देश के लिए दिया था, एक मेरे लिए. So that touched me to the core.
Colonel, when you are in war, when it's your job to protect the man next to you and it's his job to protect your life, can you tell us about that bond that exists? Can you describe it for us?
Yeah, definitely. He is definitely brother in arms, and we unit, I would say the culture is such, whereas firstly, when you say Assam Regiment or when you say Ladakh Scouts, then the feeders, basically they are from that region, and it says substantially about the culture, because these people, they are totally steeped in the culture and values of that place, and so it's a common binding factor. Firstly that, and secondly then we have got lots of activities there in the unit where firstly the leadership comes in as an officer, and secondly you are interacting with the Jawan intimately at every level. We have PT, physical training in the morning, thereafter we have got training sessions, and thereafter in the evening we have games. So it's a routine affair, a regular affair, where we come to know each and everybody personally, intimately, and we make it a business. And the commanding officer, he ensures that, an officer, he knows about each and every facet of his boy, and he is like a son to us. Though age-wise, you would say we are almost equal, 24, maybe 23 years, 22 years, people get commissioned, and there are, officers who get commissioned at the age of 18, 19 years also. So we develop that bonding over a, long period of time, and generally the officers, they spend around 10 to 15 years in the unit. So that love and bonding which we share amongst the officers, their families, and with the Jawans, it is tremendous. It is, something which only a Fauji, I think, would be able to experience. And this is the time when normally you forget your family also, because you do everything with your boys. You train with them, you go to difficult areas, you are with them there always, and we are taught to look after the boys, do everything for him. Whenever we move, we mobilize, we ensure that the boy is comfortable, he's had his food, and thereafter then we are supposed to be taking off our shoes and go back to a unit lines, or you can say the officer lines, where we relax. So it is always like this. We look after the boys, we care for them, and in return, the amount of respect which they give you, it is tremendous. It is tremendous. I just, when you come back to the civil life, initially then you feel the difference. Today, I have retired and I don't wear the uniform. You feel, you are in an alien surroundings, even back in your family also. So this is the kind of bonding which we have.
There were huge sacrifices, and we've spoken about the sacrifices in terms of the loss of lives. There was torture when our soldiers were captured. Saurabh Kalia was a young soldier. He barely got his first paycheck, right? He hadn't. The check was given but wasn't encashed.
No, he hadn't. The first salary had not been credited into his bank. He was 6 months into the forces at that time.
This young man was asked to detect or come and see if there were intruders, as was the suspicion. He was captured, and the soldiers who were with him were tortured in ways I'm not going to get into. It was a disgrace of the highest order, but something that brought home the reality of conflict in this part of the world. Rachna and I are going to speak about this, but if we can just have the images of the young person, of the young officer, Saurabh Kalia, if we can have that up. And after that, there is a message as well from his father on his continuing battle, which we'll play out. So let's have those images of Kalia. There we have Captain Saurabh Kalia of Fort Jat. Tell us, Rachna, about his story.
Okay, so Saurabh grew up Palampur, and he never wanted to join the army initially. He wanted to be a doctor, but then he started going to a school in the army cantonment, and he was so enamored with the army that he decided he wanted to be an army officer. And he was just 22, and he was commissioned in December. In May he took the patrol, where the task given to him was he had to check out Bajrang post, because the army had to go back and occupy it, not knowing that the Pakistani army had already taken over the post. So when these unsuspecting soldiers, 5 soldiers, and Saurabh, the youngest soldier, was just 19 years old in that group, they went there, they just went missing. They were not on the radio sets anymore. And on 9th of next month, their bodies were returned to the Indian Army. They were completely disfigured, and anybody can check Google. I could not sleep the night I read the post-mortem reports. And his brother told me that when the bodies were brought back, he had a look, and he said there were only eyebrows on his face, and I told my parents to not look at his body anymore. So Dr. Kalia has been fighting for the human rights of his son and the 5 young soldiers who were there, but nothing has happened so far. There has been no victory so far, but he's relentlessly going on, which makes me believe that sometimes families are as brave or even braver than the soldiers who lose their lives in Kargil.
Can we have that message of Saurabh Kalia's father?
जो अपना सर्वोच्च बलिदान देने के तैयार हैं, उसको भी कुछ अधिकार हैं। अभी आप देखिए कैप्टन सौरभ कालिया के साथ जो कुछ हुआ, वे मानव अधिकारों का उल्लंघन है। जो कोई भी पेरेंट्स है, कोई भी आर्मी है या कोई भी देश उसको एक्सेप्ट नहीं कर सकता। तो इसके लिए जो मैं भारत सरकार के साथ एक इशू जो मैंने उठाया हुआ है इतने सालों से, और अभी तक वे ऑनरेबल सुप्रीम कोर्ट में अभी तक चल रहा है, तो मैं आपके माध्यम से ये मैं लोगों को कहना चाहता हूँ, जब तक मैं जिंदा हूँ मैं इस इशू को उठाता रहूंगा, चाहे मुझे इसमें कोई हासिल हो चाहे ना हो।
Colonel Tyagi, for the benefit of people over here who may not be from a 4G background, tell us the terrain of Kargil, the frontage of the war. What made this very difficult for us, because we had to climb those heights and they were dominating the features and shooting down at our soldiers.
Thank you, Vishnu. Allow me before that just to quickly add a few comments. Not add a few comments, few more points about Saurabh Kalia. I had the fortune of visiting his battalion, Fojat. I spent the whole day there and I asked him, I said, your officer was taken and the Indian Army never allows its soldiers to be taken away like this. What have you done? Why have you not crossed the LOC and got the body back? The response was, sir, immediately. We did not have our commanding officer present at that time. He was on leave and he was returning. But of my own, we sent. There was an officer called Lieutenant Amit Bharadwaj. 6 to 7 soldiers along with him also went there. So it was a small patrol. Not known whether they crossed the line of control or not, but they too did not return. One or two of them probably returned. Two of them, that is Lieutenant Amit Bharadwaj and another senior NCO, one of the Havaldars, they were found frozen next to that Bajrang post. So my point is, a martyr does not die the day he was hit with a bullet. He dies when the nation forgets him. And that is the reason I have written this book, and probably that's the reason Rachna has written this book. I've tried to cover the entire length and breadth. He asked me about the terrain. 170 kilometers. Some of us don't even, probably may not be familiar with, we only know about Kargil. Kargil means one spot. But when you go towards Batalik, when you go towards Turtuk, where Hanif, which was named after him as subsector Hanif. So the area is so difficult. You all have traveled to Leh Ladakh, may have. The day you land in Leh, you are not allowed to walk for next 2 days. Think of that soldier who's carrying 30 kgs of weight and carrying a rifle in his hand and the lot of ammunition. Along with that, his food for the next couple of days. The orders are always generally carry about 72 hours of ration with you. Sometimes you leave that behind also or carry only the emergency rations. So when you climb up those, it's extremely difficult. So it's not only the enemy or the bullets. The first enemy is the terrain itself. The terrain is absolutely one of the Israeli Defense Force officers who was, I met him somewhere in Batalik area, told me it's only the Indian army which could have done it and captured these fields.
Colonel, I'd just like to get Colonel Wangchuk to come in on this. How difficult or how do you actually breathe at 18,000 feet with 30 kilos? I mean, what can you can't move. How do you fight?
Actually, we train for that, and I would tell you that when I got posted to Ladakh Scouts, the first thing which my commanding officer or the wing commander, normally they are known as wing commanders in Scouts, so he told me, Sonam, तू अपनी आर्मियों के बीच में है and this is an operational area और तुझे काफ़ी operations करने का मौका मिलेगा, तो you have to train hard. And कभी भी, because it's a war zone, आपको कभी भी कहीं भी भेजा सकता है, जा सकता है. So from that day onwards, I really started training. Though I was physically fit, I used to be a sportsman. I represented Delhi in athletics. Actually, I have a lot of Delhi background. So वहाँ से I started off, and I knew it entails a lot of physical work. And I used to get up early in the morning around 3:30 every day. Used to go for a 15-kilometer run. I never missed a session of physical fitness. So I used to come back. Thereafter, we used to do PT with the troops for about 1.5 hours. It used to be entirely physical. Thereafter, you go for patrolling. Since we were deployed on Sino-Indian border, it was climbing the features there along with the boys. So the entire day, and thereafter we used to finish it off with a game of baseball with the boys. So it used to be building a sort of a team also with the boys. So you had to train that hard, otherwise you knew you will not be able to survive. And the post where I was, as a company commander, that the height was around 14,000, 15,000. So thereafter, when I went into the battle zone, I didn't have much of problems because I was already used to training my body rigorously and doing this sort of a regimen. So it stood me in a good state. And speaking about the boys there, they hail from that region.
They have a third lung, right?
Yeah. Sons of the soil, and they are adept, mountain climbers. They don't have any issues there. But yeah, for somebody who's coming there for the first time, we had units which went into battle maybe without acclimatization. They faced problems. But then the Indian Army, from whichever region, the boys, they're very resilient. They adapt to that sort of a terrain, to any kind of a terrain, within 10-15 days, given that time. Because we had 14 sick. When I had captured the posts over there, there was a large amount of area. It was entirely taken over by battalion. So these boys initially they had problems because they had not acclimatized. They were coming from Delhi, which was a peace station, and the peace stations actually it's a different ball game altogether. So when they reached over there, these people, they started acclimatizing. Initially, it was bad for them, but within a month, these people, they had come into the grid and they did a wonderful job.
Sure. We're going to take a look now at Anuj Nair, another hero during Kargil. If we can play the next video out, and then we're going to talk about Hanif as well. Rachna is going to talk about that. And then we're going to also take a look at the role of the Indian Air Force. Go ahead. The moment India turned the tide on the decisive battle of Tiger Hill. The first use of a laser-guided bomb in India's history, fired from an Indian Air Force Mirage 2000. This was the team that was flying the Mirages during Kargil.
To give me a real idea of what it is to be flying in the Kargil area, some of the most treacherous terrain on the earth, the Indian Air Force has agreed to let me fly on this, a Mirage 2000.
When I met these pilots, they were young flight lieutenants and squadron leaders. Some of them are now senior air marshals. They were on their way out of the area of operations when I flew with them. What they had achieved in the weeks prior to this had been incredible. As they went in to attack, they sometimes spotted Pakistani F-16s on their radars.
We knew that they were around in that area because we could pick them up on the radars. But we never had any engagement. Quite a disappointing experience, I should say.
Adrenaline was always high when they flew into the war zone.
Once the aircraft engine started up, everything was normal. We trained for it. However, slight amount of apprehension was there. I guess it is only human to have that kind of apprehension for the first sortie.
In addition to Tiger Hill, the IF also hit targets at Muntoralo, a key supply base. But it wasn't just mirages. Pilots flying MiG-27s loaded their bombs with these messages.
We are lucky people, fighter pilots. We could vent our feelings, anger by dropping bombs. They can't do it. For them, they give their feeling like this. You missed some nice ones, like, well, one was, this is a sixer from Sachin for Akram.
But the operations didn't come without losses. A Mi-17 helicopter from the same unit you see here was shot down, and squadron leader Ajay Ahuja was shot down in a MiG-21, captured and killed by Pakistani forces. He was out looking for Flight Lieutenant Nachiketa, who had to eject but was captured by the Pak Army before being released to the Red Cross. Vishnu Shom for NDTV. So there are interesting stories really about the Air Force as well. One of the stories which almost never gets spoken about is that India's first group of women combat aviators came out of the Kargil war. Flight Lieutenant Gunjan Saxena and Sri Vidya Rajan were two young Cheetah helicopter pilots who actually flew into the Kargil zone. They were completely defenseless against surface-to-air missiles, shoulder-mounted surface-to-air missiles fired by the Pakistani forces. They were involved in ferrying soldiers from one place to another. They were involved in spotting targets as well. In the initial phases of the war, when no one really knew how many surface-to-air missiles, shoulder-mounted surface-to-air missiles, the Pakistanis had. It's amazing actually, and we aren't playing that story out today, but the story of Gunjan Saxena is, which I had reported during the war at that stage, is Karan Johar's next film. It's called The Kargil Girl, and it's coming out in a couple of months from now. So that should tell that story, which was just excerpted in a small story that we'd done back at the time. But Colonel, let me come back to you. You didn't quite finish your answer on the terrain over there, and put that in context of some of the stories of the men who fought over there that you were telling me about.
Actually, the terrain was, as we all know, ranged from 12,000 to 18,000 feet. There were plenty of standing snow, the blizzards blew at times. And if the moon was up in the sky, you could be seen from a long distance. There were rocks, there were boulders, which you could not cross. Kargil, below, right up to, you had this Mashko, Kargil, and after that, once you crossed the pass, then you reached Batalik. Batalik, accessibility was extremely difficult. There was only one road. So to carry out any operations, you had to find your own way. Occasionally it happened that when you launched an attack and you thought that we have reached the objective, you found that there was another objective, there was another peak which you had to cross or which you had to reach. I take an example of this Major Ajit of 22 Grenadiers. He was to launch an attack on a point called point 5203, somewhere in Batalik, further east. When he took his company, he found that there was a huge rock which was blocking his way. Somehow they managed to cross that, and he thought he had reached the objective. But what actually had happened was, he was on a spur between two bumps, two peaks, and both the peaks were occupied by Pakistani soldiers. He said his company was of Muslim company. So he said, Nara Takbir. Boys shouted, Allahu Akbar. And that is the time Pakistanis thought that these are our own troops. Aao bhaiyo aao. But when they charged, when they fired at the Pakistanis knew that this is the Indian Army. All hell broke loose. He was hemmed in from both the sides. His complete company got wiped out. Why I'm saying is this, because these kind of stories have yet to reach. We thought we all know everything about Kargil, everything whatever was to be known. But such stories, the individual valor and the courage. For the next 4 days, this gentleman was all alone, fighting. His reserves could not fetch up. Not by one, the second one will do the job. So that is the kind of spirit. So again, I have taken it from terrain to individual bravery.
No, and
so
thank you
forgive
so
me
much
for giving me the...
No, thank you so much for doing that, because that really is, it's all completely linked up. Rachna, another hero, and I want to touch on is Hanifuddin.
Right.
So we've got that image of Hanif as well. If we can bring up that image, Shweta, of Hanif, and then I'll get Rachna to talk a little bit about what his mission was
absolutely.
and the challenges that he faced. There you have. Go right ahead.
Yeah, so Hanif was in the Turtuk sector where the media didn't reach, so which is why probably Hanif's story didn't come out in the media. He was one of the earliest persons to go there, and he volunteered to take out a patrol to just check out enemy positions, since we did not know where the enemy was sitting. He offered to take a patrol so that when the enemy fired on the patrol, their positions and what weapons they had, that could be marked. So he took that. Unfortunately, they went too far. The positions were detected, the weapons were detected, but Hanif was killed there along with 2 other soldiers. I met Hanif's mother, and Hanif's body lay there in the snow for 43 days. It could not be retrieved because the enemy kept firing. So when General Malik, who was the army chief at that time, he visited Mrs. Aziz, Hanif's mother, And he apologized to her that Hanif's body they were not being able to retrieve despite all efforts because the enemy started firing the moment anybody tried to get his body. She said, just let him be. Usko wahin rehne dijiye, because she said, मैं नहीं चाहती कि मेरे बेटे की body लाने के लिए किसी और का बेटा मर जाए. So Hanif just lay there for 43 days and she asked the chief for permissions. She said, once the war is open, I will ask you for permission to go and visit that place so that I can at least see where Hanif died. Finally, his body was retrieved after 43 days and she did go there with her sons, with her other 2 sons. So that was what Hanif's story was all about.
There's one more story which I thought we'd tell. Shweta, we missed one video earlier. I think it's the 3rd one on Anuj Nair. We'll try and see if we can play that video out.
Vishnu, there's another point about Hanif that I wanted to mention. That his father was a Muslim, his mother was a Hindu classical singer. She used to sing for Birju Maharaj and all at Kathak Kendra. And he grew up celebrating Diwali and Eid and everything. And in the present milieu in our country, I wanted to say that he was a Muslim soldier who went to fight for the Rajputana Rifles, and their war cry is Raja Ramchandra ki jai. So he went with that war cry.
Go ahead, play the video. This is,
In the run-up to 20 years of Kargil, today we remember Captain Anuj Nair, who was all of 24 when he went up to those heights of Kargil, never to return.
At the War Memorial in Dras, soldiers like Captain Anuj Nair are honored. 20 years ago, Captain Nair was involved in one of the most heroic missions of the Kargil War, when he went up the Mashko Valley in a particular area and secured a height that had been captured by Pakistan.
Image exists on that small piece of land.
By then, Captain Nair and his men had killed 9 enemy soldiers and destroyed 3 medium machine gun positions of the Pakistan Army. His citation for the Mahavir Chakra, the 2nd highest gallantry award, credits him with outstanding personal bravery and exemplary junior leadership. Colonel Wangchuk, how do you remember your friends who you lost? You would have lost friends during Kargil. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, as I told you already, there was only one fatal casualty which we had. That was Havaldar Sawang Rigzin. And
what about other friends who died during the war?
Yeah, I won't say, because I won't, I didn't have much of an interaction. My area was very limited. So thereafter, once the operations were over, we handed over the post to 14 Sikh and we came down. But then I remember 111 GR, because immediately after my operations, I had gone to 111 GR and I was supposed to be inducted to another operational area where Ladakh Scouts troops were. So I went to the mess, and that is the time when I had seen, lots of officers. Amongst them I could see faces of young officers, maybe around 7 to 8 of them. And I had interacted with them, and since my victory was the first success for the Indian Army, so everybody, prior to that, everybody was thinking the Pakistani troops who were sitting on those heights or those features, they are invincible. And there used to be a lot of langar cups कि उनका निशाना इतना सड़ा हुआ है, बिल्कुल ही माथे के बीच में मारते हैं, and they had this advantage of height, and we had to climb those features with all that weight that Somi was talking about. So at that point in time, I think most probably I had interacted with Manoj Pandey also, who was Paramir Chakra. I really feel proud to have interacted with him. And
what did you say? What did you discuss?
I feel very bad for them. As far as my boy was concerned, at times I feel, had I planned it better, had I been trained better, because at that point in time, thing came to my mind that, you know, I should be able to evacuate him. There was around 400 to 500 meters. Had I gone there, I think then there was a depression and I could have, you know, lifted him. But then I didn't have that strength at that time. Maybe after a climb of around 2.5 hours, I was really tired. I was sweating all over. I'd spoken to my boys. I told them कि evacuate करना पड़ेगा हवलदार सेवांग रिक्सन को. We take him to safety. But then you know, the boys said in case we make a large target, we are likely to lose more boys. So you know, the pragmatism at that time, it said most probably, you know, we'll be losing more boys. So I let it be, you know, the status quo, and I didn't do anything at that time. And since then I had to proceed for linking up with the boys ahead. I had to look after the safety. The only thing which I could do was I put one of the boys, Havaldar Kadir, who was extremely fit, and I instructed him, you know, whenever there's an opportunity, he should be evacuated. And thereafter I left ahead for the mission.
Well, we've got very little time left. We will be honoring Captain Batra's parents who are with us. But I wanted to take a few questions, and can I just request all of you, in the interests of time, to make them questions and not observations. So questions for anyone on this panel. Yes, ma'am. The young student. Yes, go ahead. Why don't you stand up and ask your question? There'll be a mic which will come to you.
Good afternoon, sir. Jai Hind. I really wanted to know your views on women being allowed to be there in the battlefield.
Who would you like to answer your question? Colonel Wangchuk or?
All of them, because everyone has a different view.
I think it's a very, very welcome move that progressively we are seeing women in combat roles. I told you a little story of India's first 2 women combat aviators, the helicopter pilots. Now you have women as fighter pilots. Women are in semi-combat roles as military police now, increasingly as well. And our women officers in the army have excelled in many areas, and hopefully, in my view, in a very finite period of time, they are inducted into combat roles. Would you like to add anything to that, Colonel?
Yeah, definitely. Why not? In every sphere of life, in you know, other I would say disciplines, they are doing as well, and I don't see why the women, they cannot be fighters. They can definitely come to infantry. Maybe it's a question of time, you know, because you have certain, you know, social actually, you know, problems. So once we have, you know, we start accepting women as officers, then there shouldn't be any problems. But
combat roles,
yeah.
We'll just give you the mic. Yeah, quickly, sir, because so that.
Yeah, you know, you asked a very good question. I happened to see Gunjan Saxena flying in there and I was so amazed, so pleased. I had a video, ever time permitting, probably I'll show you, not right away, where she's flying in. There were arty shelling going on all around, and she was fearless. I was so proud to see her. Then next in Batalic again, when I went to 3 Punjab, they had been shelled. They were the first battalion which was shelled by the Pakistanis, and everybody was, everything was, the battalion headquarters was completely burnt out. Although most of them, none of them probably got injured, but the damage was done. There I found a lady doctor, a girl from Punjab. She had a young child who was being looked after at home in Amritsar, while she was treating soldiers who had been injured. So most welcome. Women can do anything.
And I think one other point is that when we have women helicopter pilots, they go in armed. If they are shot down, they fight like any man with their rifles right next to them. Gunjan carried an AK-47 next to her and an INSAS rifle, right? If she was shot down, survived that, she would fight like anybody else. So when push comes to shove, there is really no option. So hopefully that will be institutionalized. Anybody else? Sir, go ahead. A question, please.
No, I have a small comment. It originates from Colonel Wangchuk, what he has said, how difficult it is for a soldier to leave a soldier behind for the cause and the aim and the purpose for which he is going. I will tell a small anecdote, not anecdote, a real thing. I commanded 70 Infantry Brigade which fought in this operation. After Operation Vijay, after that I commanded the brigade. There was a young soldier from 3 Ladakh Scout. He went in a patrol of 10 people led by his JCO. 9 of them were killed. Pakistanis came down firing at them. He fainted as if he has also died. He had no bullets by then. They pumped couple of bullets. By then our own RT shelling started. He had 2 bullets in his stomach. He did not make noise. Imagine the thing what I am going to tell you now. A soldier with 3 years of service at 18,000 feet, 2 bullets pumped in his stomach. When he comes down, he carries his JCO with him. Why did he carry his JCO with him? 3 days and 3 nights crawling. The only food and anything water he had was that ice. I personally asked this boy. He was in my area of responsibility. This is where the regimentation, the spirit de corps. I can appreciate what Colonel Wangchuk went through when he left that soldier with another soldier to guard him. This man says, I could not have gone back to my village or my community if I did not get this JCO back with me.
Thank you very much for sharing that, sir. Who else? So you've... go ahead, sir. Thank you. Yes.
Colonel Wangchuk has raised a very pertinent issue.
We can't hear you, sir. But sir, please, a question. No comments, otherwise we'll be here forever.
Question is, the soldiers are forgotten after the battle of the war. Now, recent example I want to give that you need to highlight. Nak Seetal Singh of 8th Sikh, who killed at Tiger Hill Captain Kamal Sher Singh, and who was awarded the highest gallantry award by Pakistan. Nishane Haidar, that too recommended by Brigadier Bajwa, the commander then. But Nak Seetal Singh was in Punjab Police, who was doing the role of a sepoy, in the police, in the traffic control. When Captain Amarinder Singh, Chief Minister, got to know, he was promoted ASI.
Manaman Singh Chinna, there's a point that you are saying. Is Manaman over here?
My question is...
That is changed, sir.
You should...
One second, sir. I have a point. I will let you finish what you're saying. But Manaman Singh Chinna, the Indian Express correspondent, is over here. When he heard that story of this man, he brought it up with Amrinder Singh and he was honored.
That we know.
So there is a happy end to that story.
It is because of the media. He got
so your question, sir.
No, my question is, there is no policy. Don't you think that there is a need to have a national policy for rehabilitating settlement? And you should raise such issues.
I'm sure we certainly need to raise these issues, and there should be a policy. Anybody else? Yes, sir. But again, just question. No, question can be long, but question.
My question is to Colonel Tyagi. Of course, Sonim Wangchu is from Scouts, and I also commanded the Indus Wing Ladakh Scouts way back 10 years before the war. What I want to say is that in the hindsight, Colonel Tyagi, do you think we should have followed some other strategy instead of banging our head, knowing fully well that those people have come in and entrenched to, throw them out in a different manner?
I think, sir, if we got around to discussing Kargil and strategy and the defense of that area, it would take a lot of time. But may I request any specific shorter questions? We just have... Yeah, go ahead, sir. We'll certainly carry on this discussion once this is over with that. Yes, the last question.
Written by Pak author, that is Zahra Naseem, from Kargil to Coup. She clearly said there was not a single militant involved from the Pakistan, but we started naming it, there are the militants sitting over there. Did you people find any, did you find any militant there?
I'll answer this.
I mean, your question is that were there really the militants there?
Or just soldiers?
Or just the soldier? After the war, during the war also, there large number, I have the videos where I have gone to 17 Jat and all these people. Whatever they have captured clearly shows that they were the Northern Light Infantry.
Definitely, but we
Right.
were telling there were military.
They were telling lies. Now, when I went to America, they had invited me to, Americans were doing a study on Kargil war where the Pakistanis had also come. And the lady called Shireen Mazari, today she is the HRD minister of Pakistan. She would let me speak when I was giving the Kargil details because I was officially sent there. She would time and again say that no, they were only few people. Initially they said militants. Towards the end of the seminar, after about, I think it was 6-7 days seminar, and once the seminar finished, then she says, yes, some soldiers, it was, what had happened was we kept crawling and we kept finding it was vacant, so we kept inching forward and you never reacted. Okay. And today they said, yes, they were Northern Light Infantry soldiers. Now today, Northern Light Infantry has been regularized. It's a
And
regular army.
it's so unfortunate that they haven't been recognized for their roles
Their own
as
soldiers.
their own soldiers. I need to end this session, and I do hope we've been able to provide you with stories, which really was the objective over here. Kargil can be discussed in so many ways. It's been a real honor to speak to Colonel Wangchuk. It's been wonderful speaking to the two authors over here. And as we end this session, may I just request the parents of Captain Batra to come up with us for a small honor that we have. One second, sir.
Okay, so we are now being honoring our Himachal Braves, and we have had two Paramveer Chakras, as was mentioned, from Himachal, late Captain Vikram Batra PVC and Rifleman Subedar Sanjay Kumar PVC. And we called both the parents of the Paramveer Chakras, but only the parents of late Captain Batra have been able to make it. And I request Mr. and Mrs. Girdhari Lal to please come on the stage, and Rahul Singh, please come on the stage and welcome Mr. and Mrs. Batra, parents of late Captain Vikram Batra PVC. We are very honored to have them with us. It's a great moment. And here we would also like to welcome the army officers and their wives from Kasauli who have been specially invited for this session. And now also on stage I request General Anant Narayan, Major General Chaudhary and Brigadier Naveen Mahajan, please also come on the stage. General Anant Narayan, Major General Chaudhary and Brigadier Naveen Mahajan. I will now request General Anant Narayan to present a portrait of late Captain Vikram Batra PVC to his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Girdhari Lal, on behalf of this festival. Please, and yeah, okay. This is the portrait of Vikram Batra. दिखा दीजिए। Okay. तो सब बोलना चाहेंगे? Yes, please. Very good.
August audience, I know that lot of written about Captain Vikram Batra, so I need not to highlight his stories. But this much I will say, that he was a true country lover, a patriot and nationalist at the core of heart. He was selected for the Merchant Navy as a deck cadet in Barbara Shipping Company, headquartered at Hong Kong. At the last moment he declined because I told him the stories of the great revolutionists, great brave people like Sardar Bhagat Singh, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, Maharana Pratap, Chandrasekhar Azad, and that had impact on his mind. So he declined for the Merchant Navy. When Mrs. Batra asked why, much money, and she said, no beta, I don't need much money. Then it's okay. I declined for the merchant. We know they are very lucrative jobs. He declined it. And then he got the commission. And he was very happy. He got the infantry and he telephoned me, Daddy, I am put in the infantry battalion. I said, okay beta, it's alright. So, he was a very outstanding from the very childhood. He has a shine on his face, glittering eyes, respecting to the elders, loving to the people, good sportsman, just perfectionist. And I feel that we all are proceeding towards the perfection. We know that the God is the only perfect. But we human beings are trying to be perfect. And he was perfectionist. Thank you.
I now request General Narayan to unveil the portrait of Subedar Sanjay Kumar. He was the second recipient from Himachal Pradesh of the Paramveer Chakra for the Kargil War.
Subedar Sanjay is not here with us, so we'll ensure that this is sent to him. Thank you.
Major General Chaudhary will now unveil a portrait of late Captain Saurabh Kalia, also Braveheart from Himachal.
इधर आगे let's all come to the front. Let's all.